This video I want to talk about verbs and their subjects, so the simple clause, and the agency that's involved between the subject and the verb. Um, the verb really gets the focus of this, although you'll be able to discover it only if you look at the verb and the subject. And I'm talking about voice, okay? So a clause is going to carry a lot of information. And when you look at the verb, the main verb of a clause, and then you look at its subject, you're going to find out things like person, number, tense, or time. And you're also going to find out what we call voice. I'm not sure exactly why we call it voice. I know that's how that's the word that's in play. I would prefer to look at it as agency. Because that's really the central question there, right? And it has to do with finding the verb and then understanding who did the verb in relation to the subject. So let me give you some examples. Benjamin read a book. All right. We're going to look for the main verb to see where the simple clause is here. Let's move this through time. The whole collection of words. Benjamin read the book. Benjamin reads the book. Benjamin will read the book. So we moved it from past to present to future, simple tense movement. And we see that the word read is changing. Read, reads, will read. So in its original form, Benjamin read the book. We're going to pick out the word read as the verb, and then to find the subject, remember that formula question. Take the verb exactly as you see it as you get it in the collection of words once you find it, and then ask who or what, and then repeat the verb in its exact state. Who or what read. The words before you will give you the answer. In this case, it's Benjamin, right? Benjamin read. So read is the verb and Benjamin is the verb subject. The two together make the simple clause. Now, let's find out if this clause is in passive voice or active voice. What you do once you have the subject and the verb, you ask yourself, did the subject actually do the verb? If the subject actually did the verb, then we have a active situation here, okay? Now, the thing is, the word voice is really traditionally linked only to the verbs. I believe it really should be linked more to the clause itself because it has to do with the subject. Benjamin read, the action was produced by the subject, right? So there's this active voice there, but we say that in this sense that read is active, okay? Active voice. I guess what I'm trying to say is we never ever say that the subject is an active voice. And I'm not sure why. I think we should broaden it a bit, but voice is traditionally just directed towards the verb. Now let's look at a passive voice situation. Let's switch the sentence around and say the book was read by Benjamin. Okay, so you have that sentence now. That's the collection of words that we're looking at. By the way, I'm using sentence here a little sloppily again. Let's just say this is your collection of words. The book was read by Benjamin. Let's find the verb. We already found it previously, right? Read. So you take that verb and you ask who or what read. Now, to find the subject, you do not ask who or what did the reading. That's the find voice. To find the subject, you get the verb, and you use it exactly as it is in the sentence, in the collection of words, and then you just ask who or what, and then you repeat that exact formulation, the exact version of the verb that you have in front of you. I'm repeating this a bit because this is really important. If you can really grab a hold of this, if you haven't already, you need to. And this is your key to I believe the whole thing of clausal grammar. So the book was read by Benjamin. Read is the verb. Who or what read? Excuse me, was read is the verb, correct? Because that's moving through time. Was read, is read by Benjamin, will be read by Benjamin. So was read is your verb, Now, who or what was read? It's the book, all right? So that's your subject. And once you have your subject and verb, then you ask yourself, did the subject do the verb? And in this case, no, the book did not do the reading, correct? So because the subject did not do the verb, we call the verb passive. And I don't know why we go to the verb here, but we do, and the verb is passive, passive voice. I would prefer again to say that the whole clause is passive voice, but that's passive voice and active voice. Now, I believe that there are some modifications of this. There are some other versions of it that you may run into depending on what language you're studying. For example, there's a dual case. There's a dual voice where the verb carries the information that both the subject and the object that's involved. We haven't talked about objects yet, but both work together to share participate in the verb, if you will, in the same way. But in English, it's just passive and active. And what's important is if you just get the general idea of voice and how it's talking about agency and how it's really the more you think about it, the more these concepts are beautifully complicated. But um, you know, um, it's all about whether the subject acts upon the verb, whether the verb acts upon the subject, and when that happens, the subject is endures the action, if you will. So the book was read by Benjamin. The act of reading was endured, if you will, by the book. The book didn't actually do it. The book suffered it. Okay. I think if you look at the word passion in its etymology, you will see the sense of undergoing, right? Passing through. We tend to think of it in terms of you know, a lot of emotion, a lot of intense activity, but its original sense is best illustrated, for example, in the phrase "the Passion of Christ," the suffering of Christ, the endurance of Christ, the Christ subsisting under the activity that was shoved upon Christ. Okay, so many times people think of the Passion of Christ as his intense emotion and his intense suffering. But the passion of Christ is really talking about his endurance through the activity that was placed upon him. Okay, so it's interesting. I'll give you that, how we talk about passive and active. But if you get these core ideas, you can run with it, and you'll be able to see this information as you learn foreign languages. You'll learn the way to form passive voice or active voice. As you learn all the aspects of the verb.